From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America, your global pit stop for the latest news from the United States and around the world. I'm Eric Ham coming to you from the nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We'll get you caught up on all the top stories of the day, but first, let's take a look at the headlines. Israel is facing growing international pressure to agree to a ceasefire with Hamas and halt its ground offensive in Rafah, where over 1 million Palestinians are trapped. In an unprecedented step against Estonia, Moscow declares the Baltic states' Prime Minister, Kaja Kallas, as wanted for hostile actions against Russia. And police fire tear gas on thousands of protesters marching to India's capital near Delhi as they demand minimum crop prices. And in a rare weather phenomenon, large hailstones covered streets in the city of Al Ain, the city in United Arab Emirates, where remote work and remote school has been extended for a day in the city. The United Nations voices concern over tensions in Senegal as protests and violence escalate over President Macky Sall's decision to delay elections. We begin in Ukraine as the Russian invasion nears the 2-year mark. The end of 2023 and the beginning of 2024 has seen some major aerial assaults from both sides. After the series of setbacks in the first year, Ukrainian resistance to the invasion picked up pace in the second and proved to be extraordinarily effective in limiting Russian gains. Kiev has received political support, weaponry, and billions of dollars in aid from the West. In the beginning of the year, Ukraine targeted Russian border cities, and in response, Moscow ramped up its military production and recruited volunteer fighters. In the latest, according to preliminary analysis of missile fragments in Kiev, Russia has reportedly used Zircon Hypersonic missiles against Ukraine for the first time. As the war enters its next phase, Vladimir Putin maintains there will be no peace until Russia achieves its goals in Ukraine. Now, this comes as the Western arsenal is beginning to shrink as Putin's war in Ukraine is severely impacting European stockpiles. Germany's political defense firm Rheinmetall is raising the alarm. In fact, its chief says Europe will need 10 years before it is fully ready to defend itself. Rheinmetall CEO Armin Paperger says the ammunition stocks are currently empty. The German chancellor said Putin has shown imperial ambitions, and Danish's leader said that an aggressive Russia was proof that Europe has to scale up. Vast amounts of Europe's ammunition is being sent to Ukraine, leaving little efforts for its own stock.
And now new production must be added, if only because of the need for Ukraine to be able to defend itself, but also for our own long-term defense interests. A sustained large capacity for the production of ammunition, for example, is important.
NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg admits that the Western military alliance is facing a dire problem. He says Ukraine's ammunition expenditure is way higher than the West's rate of production, which puts defense industries under immense strain. According to the U.S. State Department, America alone has sent 1,600 Stinger missiles and 8,500 Javelin anti-tank missiles to Kiev. Experts say this is the equivalent of 13 years of production for the Stingers and 5 years for Javelins. The French arms industry has an annual production capacity of tens of thousands of 155mm artillery shells, but according to reports, it has already reached its limit. U.S. and NATO powers have urged Western defense companies to ramp up production. In fact, since the start of last year, Ukraine secured pledges from its Western allies for additional heavy battle tanks. And it has also been pleading for fighter jets, however, without any success. This year, the European Union has committed $53 billion in military aid to Ukraine, and the UK has also pledged $3 billion, while additional aid from the United States has slowed as Congress fights over next steps. Western military aid saw a sharp drop during the second half of 2023, and now there are growing fears that Moscow is gearing up for a fresh offensive in the coming weeks. The 2-year mark of the war comes just a month ahead of general elections in Russia, where Vladimir Putin is set for another term as president. The fear is not only will the war in Ukraine escalate, but the mounting threats from Russia, China, and even Iran and North Korea conflicts could break out in other parts of the world as well. Staying here in Washington, former President Donald Trump has appealed to the Supreme Court to block a lower court's ruling that denied his claim of immunity. Trump says he is immune from prosecution for charges he plotted to overturn the 2020 election laws. Trump's counsel argued that without such a shield, the presidency as we know it would cease to exist. On February 6, a U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals from the District of Columbia rejected Trump's claim of immunity from prosecution. However, Trump insists that a president must have full legal immunity to be able to carry out duties without fear of retribution. However, the appeals court said that putting a president beyond the reach of both the judiciary and the legislature would collapse the separation of powers in the United States. The appeal puts Trump's fate in the hands of the Supreme Court just 9 months ahead of the elections, where the former president in all likelihood will face President Biden in a rematch of 2020. The 9 justices will now decide whether to take up the case or potentially decline, which would automatically allow the lower court's ruling to stand. Trump's trial on interfering in the 2020 election was scheduled to begin in March of this year here in Washington, but has been delayed by the appeal. Last week, Donald Trump said if he does not get immunity, then neither should the current White House occupant, Joe Biden. This after a special counsel report opted not to charge Biden with a crime for willfully retaining classified documents when he left the vice presidency in 2017. Here's what Donald Trump had to say.
If I don't get immunity, then crooked Joe Biden doesn't get immunity, and all of the things he's done to allow the border invasion, millions and millions of people coming into our country, many from prisons, jails, mental institutions, insane asylums, many terrorists coming into our country. That's really allowing insurrection. I mean, Joe would be ripe for indictment. So you're saying that Trump shouldn't get immunity, but Joe Biden would? I didn't do anything like he did. I ran a great country.
Now, Donald Trump is the first major presidential candidate in U.S. history to be running for president while under indictment. He faces 91 counts in 4 separate criminal cases. The charges include illegally retaining classified and top-secret documents, conspiracy to subvert the 2020 election result, and illegal hush money payments to a porn actor in New York. Now, Donald Trump, however, has denied any wrongdoing in any of these cases. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden's re-election efforts are confronting its own headwinds. There are national security concerns over Biden's campaign decision to join TikTok. On Sunday, Biden's re-election campaign used the Super Bowl to kick off its new TikTok account. The campaign aims to reach young voters through the platform, but the chair of the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee has raised concerns about the decision. TikTok, owned by Chinese tech company ByteDance, is under review due to potential national security risk. Amid this controversy, White House spokesperson John Kirby said nothing has changed about TikTok's use from a national security perspective.
The administration still has concerns, security concerns about TikTok, even though the campaign has now joined it.
Again, I cannot speak, nor will I speak for the campaign. I can't do that or their decisions. Nothing's changed about the national security concerns. from the NSC's perspective about the use of TikTok on government devices. That policy is still in place. I can only tell you that it's not allowed on government devices. That policy remains the case, and I just can't speak for the campaign or their decisions. I apologize.
In fact, it was Joe Biden who signed legislation in 2022 blocking most federal government devices from even using TikTok. Several lawmakers, Democrats and Republicans, have even called for the app to be banned. They say the Chinese government could access user data or influence what people see on the app. Last month, TikTok told Congress that 170 million Americans now use the video platform, up from 150 million in 2022. The video app is extremely popular in America, especially among young people. And now to Southeast Asia. We're one day away from the world's biggest single-day elections. Indonesia goes to the polling booths on the 14th of February, and final preparations are underway. Indonesia is the third biggest democracy and the fourth most populous nation. Carrying out general elections is certainly going to be a challenge. Let's take a look at just how massive this election is going to be. Over 205 million Indonesians will cast their vote. More than 7 million electoral officials have been deployed. Over 820,000 polling stations have been set up across 17,000 islands. Some electoral officials will travel on horses, elephants, boats, helicopters, and even on foot to take ballots to voters. 580 parliamentary seats are up for grabs, and over 258,000 candidates are registered. Clearly, Indonesia's elections are a massive logistical task, and the election officers know how important their role is.
We have received 9 million ballot papers, and in East Jakarta alone, there are 2 permanent voters lists, and there are over 2 million voters and 4 types of elections: presidential, parliamentary, legislative, and provincial government. So there are approximately around 9 million voters here, and these have all been completed.
Now, apart from logistical hurdles, there's a different kind of challenge that authorities are also facing. Artificial intelligence and deepfakes have raised alarm bells. An AI-generated deepfake video of Indonesia's deceased former leader and dictator Suharto went viral. Suharto was shown speaking to Indonesians about the importance of voting in the upcoming elections. The 3-minute video has racked up close to 5 million views on social media so far. Suharto died in 2008, and this wasn't the only instance of an AI and deepfakes being used. Popular candidate Prabowo Subianto has been active on social media, and there are reports that he has used AI to give his political image a makeover. From looking younger to playing with children, Subianto has used deepfake technology extensively. Now, this is concerning because Subianto has a history of misconduct and has been accused of instigating riots when he was an army commander during Suharto's rule. And voters are worried that the rebranding has almost given Subianto a clean slate.
Youths who are targets of this rebranding do not have a grasp of the historical and political context within Prabowo's political ecosystem. This is consistent with narratives on TikTok, such as, if he did violate human rights, why was he never jailed?
Now, it's just not Subianto who has shown a keen interest in deepfake technology. In fact, 2 additional presidential candidates are also implementing AI. Gonzalo Prabowo uses deepfake generated photos in his campaigns, and Anis Baswedan has admitted to using an AI-powered chatbot to answer questions asked by voters. Clearly, the candidates have embedded technology into their campaign efficiently, which has been shared on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And for the first time, we are going to witness the impact AI will have on such a large-scale electoral process. Of course, Indonesia's Ministry of Communications has issued an advisory for voters. They have also launched an awareness campaign against AI and deepfakes. Of course, there are concerns about voters getting manipulated by technology, but it looks like the warnings are too late and people have already made up their mind.
Oh, udah pasti itu. Udah pasti. Saya kan orang asli, orang Jawa Tengah. Jawa Tengah kan wakil saya itu Bapak.
Karena saya sangat suka dengan program-programnya untuk lanjutkan Jokowi.
The use of AI and deepfake technology in Indonesia's elections is a case study in and of itself. As the Southeast nation gears up to vote, capitals from around the world will be watching and learning. In fact, this year has some of the biggest elections in store, with Indonesia, the United States, and India. Over 1 billion people will be heading to the polls. Governments will have to address the impact that AI and deepfakes can have and possibly will have on swaying voters in elections. And now we shift our focus to Africa, where violent clashes have rocked the Democratic Republic of Congo's capital city of Kinshasa. Demonstrations took place outside embassies of several Western nations and the offices of the United Nations. Congolese supporters accused the West of supporting Rwanda, which allegedly backs the M23 rebellion. The M23 rebellion was an armed conflict allegedly supported by Rwanda, which ended with a peace agreement in 2013. Now, M23 fighters have made strategic advances threatening the peace treaty with the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rwanda has dismissed all accusations. Here's the full report.
Residents in the Democratic Republic of Congo's capital city, Kinshasa, woke up to violent protests and clashes. Demonstrators burned tires outside the embassies of several Western nations. Protests also took place outside the office of the United Nations. The Congolese are accusing the West of supporting Rwanda. But why are they protesting against the West because of their neighbors to the east? That's because of the M23 rebellion. Here's a background to M23 and the tensions between DR Congo and Rwanda. The M23 rebellion was an armed conflict in the eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo. The ethnic rebel group comprised of Tutsis. They picked up arms in 2012 by claiming that they wanted to protect their identity from the government in DR Congo. The fighting left thousands dead and millions displaced. DR Congo accused Rwanda of supporting and aiding the M23 rebellion, because Rwanda is a majoritarian Tutsi nation. Tensions flared and violent clashes became common in the eastern Congolese city of Goma. But in 2013, a peace agreement was signed and the M23 either surrendered or fled to Rwanda. Now M23 has become active again and have made advances towards Goma city. This brings us to today. The Congolese are unhappy with M23 making a comeback, and they're blaming the West for igniting a war-like situation.
They say one thing in their assemblies, international communities, European assemblies, but deep down they practice other things. So we have decided that we Congolese will take our matters into our own hands. We will bypass what has been planned by their lying law, and we will take charge of our problem. We warn the international community not to interfere in our affairs anymore.
We're claiming our rights. France and the United States are fostering the war in the eastern DRC by supporting the rebellion. A country like Rwanda cannot fight against the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We are marching. We're not breaking or destroying people's property, but the head of the police is sending his officers to chase us away.
A conflict that had once died down is making a comeback after a decade. Rwanda has denied all accusations. Rwanda says that the M23 rebellion is an internal matter of the DR Congo, and the mineral-rich eastern region of the Democratic Republic of Congo is facing a crisis once again.
A Valentine's Day gift is incomplete without a box of chocolates. The little treats arranged in satisfying lines is a sight to behold. But if you're thinking about gifting your partner a box of chocolate this Valentine's Day, then you might have to think twice. Because while love may not cost a thing, your box of chocolate certainly does. Our next report tells you why.
Chocolates, a staple in our lives, are more than just a treat. They're there for every occasion. Need a pick-me-up after a promotion? Chocolate. Going through a tough breakup? Chocolate to the rescue. In sickness and in health, chocolates have always had our back. After all, even Forrest Gump has said, life is like a box of chocolates. And now it's that time of the year where chocolate sells like hotcakes. From customized flavors to unique shapes, cocoa gears up to woo its receiver. But hold on to your sweet tooth, because this Valentine's Day, the chocolate scene isn't looking as rosy as usual. With global warming taking a toll, our beloved chocolates are facing a meltdown. Cocoa prices have skyrocketed to record highs, doubling in the past year alone and witnessing a whopping 40% surge in 2024. Last week in London and in New York, the price of cocoa touched the mark of $6,000 per ton. It's not just breaking records, it's breaking hearts too, as customers may have to dig deeper into their pockets for a taste of the sweet stuff. So here's what's happening. The climate crisis has triggered a global chocolate crisis. Extreme weather conditions are wreaking havoc on the cocoa-producing regions, especially in West Africa, which supplies over 60% of the world's cocoa. Weather situations like prolonged droughts and floods are damaging crops severely, leading to a cocoa supply crunch and soaring prices. A cocoa producer from Ghana says that he's not seeing good yield from the farm. High temperatures and intense rain during the growing season increases the risk of black pod disease. Rains cause fungi to grow on the trees and makes the cocoa pod black. According to estimates, Africa might lose about $529 million. Even chocolate giants like Hershey are feeling the pinch and are considering job cuts to cope with rising costs. They say that the price of their products have risen by 6.5% in 2023. Nestle and Cadbury aren't spared either. They're also subtly hiking up their prices every year. One of the oldest shops in Manhattan, called Lilac Chocolates, said their prices are up by 13% this year. A senior food and beverage economist said that retail chocolate prices have surged by 17% in the last 2 years. And the trend shows no signs of stopping. They say you can't put a price on love, but this Valentine's, your chocolates are definitely coming with a heavy one.
That's all for the show today. Thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
We're beating Biden.
How dare he say that?
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America.